Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Jaswinder Kumar, Assistant Professor, University Institute of Hotel and Tourism Management, Punjab University, Chandigarh. Today, we will discuss about writing a research paper, and after completion of this module, you will be able to learn about a research paper. You will also learn various technical aspects while writing a research paper, and you will understand the basic structure of a research paper. A research paper is like an essay. It is usually longer and uses outside sources to support arguments. In research paper, researcher explains what he or she has learned after exploring the topic in depth. Researcher includes information from sources such as books, articles, interviews, internet-sized sites, etc., and also uses own ideas, knowledge, and opinions. A research paper has a clearly written statement covering a topic that is open to debate. A research paper carefully develops each point. The main purpose of a research paper is to give ideas and opinions about the topic and to use other sources to support the position. The primary task of a researcher is to convey results to the readers. Whether in written or oral form, scientific communication in a research paper is a critical step which is also called as a scientific method and is key driver of movement within a scientific field such as a research paper. Let us understand various steps in writing a research paper. First of all, in first step, it is important to select a topic. Researcher should choose topic carefully, keeping in mind the amount of time researcher have to write the paper, the length of the paper, intended audience, and the limits of the resources. There is need to check in the library to make sure a reasonable amount of information is available on the subject that researcher choose. Writing the paper will be much easier for a researcher if subject is selected according to the interest of the researcher. In fact, it will be easier on the narrowing the topic if researcher is well aware about the subject and the topic. There is need to avoid controversial and sensational subjects that are not scholarly or too technical or will only restate the research material. The purpose of research is to construct a clearly written document that describes a question and then logically presents an answer to this question that is based upon theoretical or experimental research. A research paper is meant to convey technical information to the reader. Therefore, it is generally designed to be a straightforward presentation and discussion. Paragraphs and sentences should be simply constructed. One point of view that supports this concept is that the scientific aspect of the research paper may be challenging enough for the reader to comprehend. Thus, the text itself should support the endeavor to convey the scientific information in the research paper rather than acting to further obscure the concepts and results. The research statement in the research paper is the opinion or assertion of researcher about the topic. It is the point where the researcher is trying to prove. The more specific the research statement is, the easier it will for researcher to the research and write the research paper. If researcher is having trouble in developing a research statement, researcher should try to ask a question that his or her research can answer. The next step is to narrow the topic. The topic of the paper is what a researcher wants to say about the subject. To narrow the topic, researchers need to read the background articles about the subject in various encyclopedias and in various references. Do not take notes at this time other than to just write the main ideas. As researcher will read and ask the questions such as who are the people involved in the research, what are the major issues, what are the opinions of researcher regarding the topic, why is this topic is important, controversial or interesting, how has the problem is developed, when it is developed, where it is developed, and the answer will help the researcher to narrow the topic. The next important step is to write the research statement. Researcher needs to compose a statement that describes the viewpoint that he or she is going to express and support in research paper. Since the purpose of researcher is to write a research paper that will prove the validity of research, the research statement provides a controlling idea which will help the researcher to choose the resource materials that will be used and will limit the note taking, such as the research statement can be that tourist satisfaction in a destination is related to the services provided in the destination. Thus, there should be certain important aspects to be followed while select a topic that is interesting to you. It should be a question that you want to answer, a condition you want to investigate, an issue you want to explore, something that you will enjoy learning about. You will do a much better job if you are interested in what you are reading about. The next thing is that make sure that information is available on your subject. Check the libraries to see if you will be able to find enough sources to write your research paper. Make sure that sources you want are actually in the libraries. Do not rely on the card catalog or periodical guide. Check the internet to see if you can find reliable sources that will be accepted by the various people as well as your research guide. Choose a topic that is narrow enough that you will be able to develop it in the time available. Keep in mind that you will have only a certain amount of time to write the research paper. Make sure and select a topic that you can deal with in that time frame. Your instructor or your research guide may also be able to help you in other stages of the research, as well as your friends or colleagues who are also doing research, they can also assist you in various stages of the research. After that is to prepare bibliography. In next step, a preliminary bibliography should be prepared, that is a list of potential sources of information. In addition to the card catalog and the guides to reference books, there are other sources which will help the researcher to locate articles and books relevant to the topic, such as reference guides to indexes and abstracts, indexes, reader's guide to periodical literature, business periodical index, social sciences and humanities index, bibliographies, bibliographic index, etc. Evaluate the potential sources as you go along, keeping in mind how well they relate to the topic and how updated they are and how available they are. If researchers take notes carefully, there will be various materials related to the topic that can easily organize the material later. Once the notes are taken from a source, it should be consulted with various materials. The notes which are written should contain a brief summary of information and identification of the source. So there are guidelines for notes. Write the notes on the index cards. Write only on the front of the card. Put only one source and one subject on a card. Create a bibliography card for each source with the information researcher will need to create a works cited page, subject, author's name, title, volume, page, edition and so on. After that, write the information on the topic, be accurate but as brief as possible. There is no need to write complete sentences as long as researcher can understand what have written later. Abbreviations may also be used. Quotations should be copied correctly and enclosed in quotation marks. Note the page numbers from which the quote was taken. It is unnecessary to write down facts which a researcher already know. Write only new information. Researcher should continue notes on another card. List the source at the top in an abbreviated form. After that, the next important step is to prepare a working outline. A working outline provides a good starting point and it is essential before researcher start to take notes. Begin by listing the topic researcher want to discuss in the research paper. Divide the items on the list into major topics and subtopics. This outline will give researcher the structure to do research and can help to pull another information together for the first draft. Outline should indicate the main points that researcher will cover, the order in which the work will be done, and the relationship between main ideas and supporting details. Be aware that you might have to change your outline while you are doing your research as you find new ideas or decide not to write about one of your topics. It is important that no matter what type of sources are used, researcher should spend some time evaluating the source to make sure it is reliable and can help in developing the research paper. Some commonly used resources available in the library are bibliographies, general bibliography list books which are available in a variety of fields. Researcher want to check books in print or the bibliographic index. For example, the indexes list articles by subject or author. Some of these like the guide to periodical indexes, variety of topics related to the field such as journals, the variety of journals available in the library. After that, write the rough draft. After you have completed your final outline, you can begin to write your rough draft. It is important to remember that this rough draft will be revised. Therefore, at the same time, you do not need to worry too much about various mistakes. Instead, you should concentrate on the content of the paper. The outline and expansion of ideas with information from notes should be taken. The paper should consist the three parts: introduction, the body of the paper and the conclusion. The introduction should state the research, summarize the main ideas of the paper and capture the reader's interest. The body of the paper should develop each section of the outline and the conclusions should summarize the findings and restate the research. Dear students, let us discuss the detailed structure of a research paper. A scientific research must begin with the defined research question, which results in a well-designed research protocol that plans the overall approach. This should lead to a set of data from which the research paper can be developed. Research paper typically have the sum of the following components. First one is title page, abstract, next is introduction, after that methods, then results, then discussions, then conclusions, then acknowledgements, references, then tables and table captions, and then figure and figure captions. For locating sources, it is important to look at various books, journals located on the libraries. Libraries usually have shell books on similar topics in the same place. Look at sources listed in the bibliography reference section of a book or article that has good information related to the topic. You can find some of the sources listed as references for that book or article as well. Look through the other articles or table of contents of a good journal which has a good article on the topic. Sometimes journals publish more than one article on the same topic in the same issue. You should be flexible and open-minded in your research for sources related to the topic. While making a proper structure of the research paper, that title page is very important. A title page should be included and it should state the title of the research paper, which should be short and simple, as well as the authors and authors affiliation should be given. Indicate the journal to which the research paper is to being submitted. Provide at least 4 to 5 keywords as well as a short title for the research paper. Finally, provide complete contact information for the corresponding author. The abstract is typically a single paragraph. The abstract should be considered as an important document so that the abstract does not rely upon any material. The body of the report does not rely upon any material in the abstract. The first sentence should clearly state the objective of the research. If the research is based upon a hypothesis, which is greatly preferred, the hypothesis should be stated and followed with statements describing its basis and evaluation. The subsequent sentences describe how the investigation was carried out. After that, the sentences written should describe with as much as precision as possible without being verbose. The results of the research should also be written. The significance of the results and the impact of the research on general field of the study should also be mentioned. The introduction requires a short review of the literature pertaining to the research topic. The introduction is then best constructed as a descriptive funnel, starting with broad topics and slowly focusing on the work at hand. 3 to 4 paragraphs are needed for describing the introduction. One approach may be to start with 1 or 2 paragraphs that introduce the reader to the general field of the study. The subsequent paragraphs then describe how the aspect of this field could be improved, and the final paragraph should state the next important step is the research methods. This section should be straightforward description of the methods used in the research study. Each method should be described in a separate section. Begin in a single section with a statement of the materials used in the study, indicating the information is critical so that readers have capability to repeat the work in their own research. After that, describe in the next section the each key procedures and techniques used in the study. Keep explanations brief and concise. If a specific research design is utilized, describe the design in second section of the methods and after the materials section. Similarly, if a theoretical or modeling component is utilized, it should also be incorporated in the initial portion of the methods. Finally, describe the statistical analysis methods that are utilized to analyze the results, or most likely in the final section of the methods section. The next important section is the results. The results section presents the research data to the reader and is not a place of discussion or interpretation of the data. The data itself should be presented in tables and figures. Introduce each group of tables and figures in a separate paragraph where the overall trends and data points of a particular interest are noted. Researcher may want to indicate the placement of a particular table or figure in the text. The key statistics such as the number of samples, the index of dispersion such as standard deviation, the index of central tendency such as mean, median, mode. These should be properly stated. Include any statistical analysis that was performed and make sure to indicate specific statistical data such as the p-values. Note that each table and figures in the paper must be referred to in the results section. After that, important step is discussion. If the work has presented a hypothesis, use the results to construct a logical argument that supports or rejects the hypothesis. If the work has identified 3 main objectives for the work, use the results to address each of these objectives. A well-defined study that is described in the introduction along with supporting results that are presented in the results section. Begin with the discussion section with the brief paragraph that again gives an overview of the work. Summarize the most important findings and, if applicable, accept or reject the proposed hypothesis. Next, identify the most interesting, significant, remarkable findings that were presented in the results section and contrast these findings in the light of other studies reported in the literature. It is often informative if a discussion of the potential weaknesses of the interpretation is also included. At the end of the discussion section, consider the other works in the literature that address the topic and how this work contributed to the overall field of the study. After that, the important section is references. In this section, include all references that have been cited in the text. The references should be well considered so that they contain all key sources in the field as well as previous studies that supported or motivated the present work. Do not include extraneous source references. Do not include those references which were not part of the research. It may be appropriate to cite previous publications, research from your own institutions. Dear students, next important section is of tables and the table captions. Tables should generally be included in a separate section after the references section. The table should be headed with the caption and the title in the bold, followed by a sentence or two that describes the content and the impact of the data included in the table. The table itself should be formatted so that the data is clearly presented and easily interpreted by the reviewer. However, the table is likely to be reformatted by journal to conform to its standards. Make sure that each table is referred to in the research paper and its text. This will most likely occur in the results section but may also occur in the introduction, methods or discussion sections. Next important section is appendices. This section is where the researcher may place any additional information such as statistical calculations or copies of materials like word lists or surveys. Everything in the appendix must be referred to somewhere in the body of the report. Plagiarism means using someone else's ideas, words or statistics in your writing without giving credit to the source. There are several ways to avoid plagiarism. Each of these methods require that you give proper documentation of the information. You can also do the paraphrasing, means to rewrite a portion of the original text in your own words. A paraphrase is usually about the same length as the original and follows the source sentence by sentence and idea by idea. It must not change the sense of the original. You still must give the credit to the original source by using proper documentation. You can also remove plagiarism by giving the quotations, and for this, copy words, sentences, expressions directly from the original source. The spelling, punctuation, wording and order of the words must be exactly like the original source. Credit should be given to the original source by using proper documentation. Dear students, till now we discussed that a research article or research paper is a technical document that describes a significant experimental, theoretical or observational extension of current knowledge or advances in the practical application of known principles. Thus, it is important to emphasize that a research article should report on research findings that are not only sound and original, but also add some new understanding, observation, proofs, means that these are potentially important information. It requires a good skills in structuring and phrasing various findings and thoughts while writing a research paper, which requires to understand the various technical aspects of research papers and presented in a well structured manner. I hope you have enjoyed this session. Thank you very much.